Mastering AML, KYC and Data Protection in Asia.
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to ask you all just to give a very brief introduction as to who you are and what you do, because I know we have a huge amount of experience here in compliance and it's some legal pilot. It's absolutely the highest level. So let everybody know your credentials and then we'll get on with the questions. So Katerina first.
Yeah, sure. Hello all. So I will start with a short introduction about myself. My name is Katerina. I'm a managing partner of legal pilot firm. Actually, we have founded that with my partner who is sitting here, and we have like a very deep expertise in the provision of the legal services for gambling businesses. So it's like legal structuring, licensing, compliance, and so on. So it's like even short. Okay. It does not work if you can change us the one microphone.
Yeah, hi.
Okay, so Navneeth, go ahead.
I'm Navneeth Srinivas, been in the online gaming space for the last 22 years. Worked for companies like Party Gaming, worked there for a couple of years.
God, you really have started out from the very beginning.
Yes. So started my career in online and iGaming space in 2001. Been in the space since the last 22 odd years. Worked for multiple brands, right from Party Gaming to Rummy Circle, which is one of the biggest rummy brands in India. Then I ventured out, started a couple of companies, Pokerbunga, Poker High. We were into online poker. 2021, we ventured out and started MetaGame services. So basically, we do a lot of tech development for gaming companies, and we also developing an AI/ML stack with a partner company called NimbleEdge, which is actually doing a lot of computing on the device using edge computing and federated learning, which also means that we are also compliant with GDPR, and so that's what brings me here.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I was going to say, you look too young to have been in the industry for 22 years.
Thanks a lot. I'll take that as a compliment.
So I'm Kris. I've been in the industry for 15 years. Worked at PokerStars, worked at Entain previously, worked in the grey market casino space as well for some smaller skin operators also, in the next gen space too. I'm with, now I tend to focus a lot more on anti-fraud, on KYC, on behavior monitoring, behavioral biometrics, items like this. So very glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. And so I wasn't lying when I said we've got a panel of experts here. There's a lot of years of experience. So I'm gonna start off by, because you've mentioned India, you're very big in Thailand. So I want to talk about the countries first. So, and then I'm going to go on and I'm going to kind of break it up by KYC, AML, and data protection. So we're going to cover that. But in terms of Thailand is probably one of the most prolific countries now that is looking at clamping down on illegal gaming, and it's looking at new legislation at the moment. So do you want to tell us a little bit about Thailand in terms of the topics that we're looking at?
Okay, so as for Thailand, I mean, it's quite interesting market, let's say, for gaming businesses. So I think that they have like some strong regulation right now and also the changes into it. So the main problem here that Thailand's authorities, they combat with illegal operations a lot. So it's like very important to follow the theme of our topic is like to follow all the regulations regarding the legal operations here in Thailand and follow all the AML and KYC operations here. Also, they have the changes in the data privacy policy as well, because especially they have their main topic now on the transfer of the data, like cross-border transfer. So right now you will have the obligation to report to the authorities in case the business would like to transfer this data to some other country, and also they're taking care about the sensitivity of this data. So, and especially as we see for now that the enforcement bodies in Thailand, they pay a huge attention to the illegal operations here. So if you are looking for operating into the market, please pay attention to that, because like the extent of the responsibility that you can you accept is quite huge. So if you would like to feel yourself safe, just get some consultancy about the proper operating in this market to accept the risk in this specific regulation. Because if you see like the statistics of all the like criminal proceedings or some other proceedings like with enforcement of the legal operations in Thailand like is #1 among all the countries worldwide.
Okay. And Navneeth, what about India?
Yes. See, India is very sensitive to these topics, let it be AML, let it be KYC or data protection. I'll just map each topic separately. When it comes to AML, the IT laws were always there, making it that much more difficult for money laundering, and the introduction of PMLA, which is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, which was introduced in 2002, which makes it very, very stringent. They have a very stringent guidelines of reporting and identification of fraudulent transactions. And so much so that last year in 2023, they've amended this law to include digital assets and cryptocurrency. So the custodian for AML in India is the Enforcement Directorate, which is the ED, which is pretty strict. And if you actually see a lot of offshore casinos, online casinos, which are coming into India, and since I think last 4-5 years, from the time COVID hit, you'll see a sudden peak of a lot of operators venturing into India, and so is ED. ED is very actively looking at different operators, looking at transactions and making sure that fraudulent transactions or operators who do not comply with the rules of the land are punished, right? When it comes to KYC, the Reserve Bank of India, since the time I know, have always been, preaching about know your customer, which is very, very important. All the financial transactions or any person or any operator or any bank who have any money of the customers have to follow the KYC, right? Know your customer. They have forms. They've also introduced digital KYC, the acceptance of digital KYC. It took a while for people to understand that digital KYC is safe. They've also introduced digital KYC, acknowledged, recognized that digital KYC is a way to go forward, because digital KYC also means that biometric. So a lot of operators are using biometric to validate the KYC of the customers. And the government is also introducing the central KYC registry, which means going ahead, you do not have to disclose your KYC to any of the operators, right? So this is where we were talking about the AIML, which comes and sits on your device, and you just have to validate against the central KYC. And if you validate it, then you can go ahead. So what essentially you're doing, you're not sharing your information to any outside or third-party operators. You're just sharing a key, which is given by the central KYC registry to validate against it. So that way it's safe. And also when it comes to data protection, we've introduced a act which is data personal protection, the DPDP, which is on lines of GDPR, which also talks about minimizing the data collection, ensuring that the data is not shared, ensuring that you give the power back to the customer to tell him what he can share, what he can't share, and things like that. While we talk, the DPDP is being implemented. It's in a very nascent stage, but very soon you'll see a lot of adherence to it, and also penalization if the adherence is not there. So India is walking towards all the three of them in a very big way, and we're very sensitive about these things, because only by implementation of this will your country grow in terms of.
Okay, so we're sitting here in Manila, and so all of you are global companies, but especially Sumsub. So I'm going to ask you, are there any particular things about Asia in terms of AML/fraud that are unique to the region? Not necessarily unique, but that are highly prevalent more than other regions. So Kris, if you could answer that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I can answer it, I think, from a number of different perspectives, because it's a massively evolving and changing region. And for example, our recent fraud report showed that most fraud comes from 3 Asian countries, which are Bangladesh, Pakistan, and South Korea. And that's globally. So we see a lot of that here. We also see a lot of ID fraud as well, for example. So you're nodding. And this comes in a variety of different forms, which we don't always see elsewhere. It can be fully consensual ID fraud in the sense that people will sign up to a fraud ring and use their own information to actually onboard and then engage in a variety of different schemes depending on what that is. I think another issue is going to be the structure and how regulation comes together across the region as well, and whether there's any unification there. Because I think Asia in general is quite saturated with a lot of grey market operators. And because of the lack of regulation within grey markets, they've really had the opportunity to innovate over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And we also don't have too much data in order to quantify just exactly how successful they are in this case, but they're creating, I think, a generation of users that the regulated market just isn't ready to accept, who are going to come with an entire new set of expectations that aren't necessarily going to be accommodated by markets who are being consistent with the regulation, which is going to potentially push them into a black market situation.
Okay, and Katerina, you mentioned specifically the prevalence of credit cards and credit card fraud that is in Asia. So do you want to chat a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I think that Asian region has some its own features that relates to the fraud. Okay, and we can see that the markets are really huge, and actually the nationalities in Asia, they are very gambling people. So that is why it's like a great interest of the fraudsters, to abuse those systems of the online casino. So the most popular way to abuse online casinos for sure is to steal the credit cards data. So it's the most popular one, and actually it's because of the digitalization of the Asian market, when it's very easy to get the fiat money and to transfer them to the untraceable digital currencies, it makes the life for the fraudster more easier. So we see and we investigated the ways how you can combat with the fraud regarding the credit cards here. So the first one and very important is actually to have the enhanced KYC here as well, to check the users. And the second one is to have the real-time transaction monitoring. And actually, a lot of operators are starting to use AI here because it makes the scene more effectiveness. Because actually, they can do that constantly and to trace specifically features of the behavior of the users, to see whether the card was stolen or not, changing their behavior in the transactions of each specific user. And also, the one most seen that is very interesting is I think that the operators and bank cards companies and also payment solution, PSP, AMIs and so on, they should think about some common fields of cooperation. For example, in case a bank knows the details about that card is stolen or something like that, maybe there should be some exchangeable storage of this data. Or in case the operator knows the details that the card is stolen, that they should escalate this information to.
Yeah, having a joined up and a holistic view by jurisdiction is the holy grail, isn't it? It's difficult to achieve. Everybody knows it's the ideal, but it's very difficult to achieve.
Unfortunately.
Okay, I can see you want to say something.
No, I basically you're an advisor in Curaçao, and we basically wanted to understand what it takes, as in when you've seen a lot of license being given out by Curaçao, and you've also seen a lot of operators taking. So according to you, what kind of frauds are there in the market right now? I know there was one particular thing which is structuring, which means that operators now are repatriating funds out of the country, the grey operators and all, where large sums are broken down into smaller amounts and then being withdrawn from. Similarly, do you see any trends, in terms of fraudulent activities specifically for AML in your region?
Okay, I'm being asked a question now. Okay, this is a turn for the books. With Curaçao, it's we've had the issue where under the kind of existing legislation for the last 20 years, actually 30 years, the legislation was drafted in '93. And so that is, any legislation drafted that long ago is not fit for purpose. It's absolutely not fit for purpose. Also, so that's the purpose of the, that's one of the purposes of the evolving legislation. So what we have in Curaçao is historically, you had a gap between the regulator and the operator. So you have this layer of master licensors. And the regulator did not have the legal power to actually engage in monitoring the operators. In actual fact, the regulator, until recently, the GCB, was not aware of the full list of domains that was operating underneath its jurisdiction, because there was 4 license holders, and they had private contracts. And so the regulator, so they were the de facto regulators, because they set the policies, they monitored the policies, they checked everything, and there wasn't a legal option for the GCB to actually be a full-on regulator. And in addition, the GCB was only able to do 2 things: issue a license or revoke a license. There was no in between. So not only did they not know who was operating, did they not set the policies and procedures, but also they weren't able to do anything legally about misbehavior and nefarious behavior. So that's what's changing. That's what's already changed in Curaçao. And so with the AML and KYC, there are now kind of, there's minimal levels, but the GCB expects that if you are in higher risk markets, or if you are taking, let's just say, VIP players who are betting tens and hundreds of thousands, then we expect to see more AML, to see more KYC, than if you're just like in a nice, cuddly, friendly market and somebody's betting, like my mother will bet twice a year on the World Cup and the Grand National. I'm less concerned, the GCB is less concerned about knowing where her money comes from than they are somebody who's spending 10,000 a week. So that's where it is. So Kris, go ahead.
I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt.
No, please go ahead. I love a good conversation.
It's turning into more of a debate, isn't it? I love it. I was going to say that I completely agree, and I think because of that, we've almost got 2 subtypes of user, like I touched upon a while ago. The users who have had that freedom based on the 1993 Curaçao legislation that you referred to, who are used to signing in using their Steam account, or signing in using a line ID in Thailand, for example. And I think that transitioning them into a regulated framework is going to be a very, very interesting challenge. So sorry, Karen.
No, please. Sorry,
I was just going to say, so I might catch up with you afterwards just to check in on if there are any plans surrounding that onboarding process, just from a KYC perspective, and what the regulation is going to be in that area. Because I think a lot of regions in Asia who are now moving into a regulated environment are going to be trying to onboard a customer who's used to an entirely different experience. Mm-hmm. And how we facilitate that, I think, is going to be a very exciting challenge.
Believe me, it is. It's been a very interesting months and year that we've had. I feel like I'm hijacking this conversation. I'm going to go back to you guys in a second, but specifically since you asked, with regards to that, AML and KYC are paramount. So I think I spoke earlier about, say, cryptocurrency. The benefits of cryptocurrency is anonymity. It's expediency, and we care about AML. We see crypto, for example, as a currency. We care about knowing your customers to a certain level, the minimum required level. But we're quite in Curaçao. We're quite aware that there are different models, and like, for example, in Asia, the agent model is very prevalent, and so we're aware of this. And so what we're asking of our license holders is just tell us what you're doing, and make sure your policies and procedures match that, and let's discuss it. Let's find the middle ground that works for all of us, because we are a brand new jurisdiction with a 20-year history. Yeah. And so we're working to facilitate that while meeting an AML standard, in particular, and a KYC standard, because those are the things that are important. So if you have crypto, we just say it's a currency. Yeah. But I still want to see the AML. I still want to see the level of KYC. But it's like our important part is they are more important than the source or anything. It's the policies are more important than that, which is why you have to match your policies and procedures in all areas with your business model, because some are going to be way higher expectations than others.
And they all come with their independent and unique set of risks and
exactly.
Yeah,
so it's a risk-based approach,
Yeah.
and it's very much a risk-based approach, and that is on the operator. And so what you have is a situation where anything that gets told to any regulator in any capacity, if it comes across your desk as a regulator, you have to address it.
Absolutely. And I think in Asia specifically, there are many more, let's say, cliques than there seem to be in the West. So in the West, I think a lot of those two markets can be broken down by demographic. You've got the Gen Z, who are more used to a video gaming infrastructure, let's say, because I think for Gen Z, video gaming is the second most popular hobby, whereas for millennials, it's seventh. So there's a big discrepancy there. But I think in Asia, looking at Asian markets specifically, we see a big difference between player types, not just by age demographic, but also by location. So we see more of a skin trading type casino in South Korea, for example, where if we move into Thailand, it's more of and correct me if I'm wrong, it's more of the traditional Baccarat type player who would come along. And I imagine that India as well is completely different, probably on a state-by-state basis.
India started out with
absolutely.
India started out very much rummy. That's a huge.
Really?
Rummy is a huge
absolutely.
online game in India.
So if you actually see, I'll just give some numbers behind. Poker in India started probably very late, probably 2007, 2008. Today, the combined revenues of the poker industry in India per month is close to $40 to $50 million. Whereas when you talk about rummy, we are talking about nothing less than $3 to $5 million a day. So you see that kinds of the market, right? There are other traditional games like Teen Patti, right? Which is, according to me, at least 2x the size of rummy, which is right now considered as a game of chance than a game of skill. There are talks with the government, just to add on to what you said in the past. India is also walking towards regulation. The ministry has announced that they're going to, have 2 or 3 SRBs, which is self-regulatory boards. They are not dictating to the industry. They are telling the industry, tell us what you're going to do and adhere to that. Instead of they coming up with their rules, they're just saying that you tell us what you want.
Yeah, and that's
right?
a grown-up approach. It's what I call a grown-up approach.
That's right.
It's like, you tell us what you're doing and we'll work with you on that.
Correct.
Some things are going to be a hard no. Some things are just, you're not even going to question them.
I mean, that's
yes.
the negotiation,
and everything
right?
else, you just work it out for the good of the good. Okay, here we go.
I love this. I love this so much. Can we cancel just everybody else after us and let's just stay here? So I was saying, can we just cancel everybody else and let's just stay here having this debate for the day? I was going to say I absolutely agree, but I think one of the issues with self-regulating is that the regulator isn't always going to necessarily understand the nature of the game. So if you went to a self-regulator now and tried to explain the concept of dice to them, they're going to imagine rolling a dice. They're not going to see the algorithm that you set before you play on a website like stake.com, for example.
This is the regulators you're talking about, or you're talking about the self-regulating bodies or the government?
Both, because it's a case of self-regulating and then going to the regulators and explaining and having open communication.
When it comes to self-regulated bodies and when they have to determine a particular game, they're gone are those days where we say that I have a feeling that this is gambling. No, I think we have to walk away from what your gut feeling is saying to very systematic approach as to understand the game math behind it, understand the probability behind it. There are companies like the GLI and all where they can test and say that we've run a million hands or a million deals over here, and out of these million deals, these are the percentage of chance, and this is the percentage of skill, which clearly indicates whether the game is a game of skill or a game of chance. And if it's a game of chance, what kind of chance we are talking about, right? So understanding the game should be very, very well thought. It just can't be on a gut feel. It has to be on substantial data.
Yeah. I agree, but it takes me back to sort of 2009 at PokerStars when we were trying to explain the concept of a game of skill, and poker is a game of skill.
That's
and
right.
if somebody's never played it, they won't understand it at all.
Absolutely, I share the same feeling. I was with Party Poker.
Okay.
So Party
Okay.
Poker and PokerStars were in the midst of the storm.
Yeah,
You know, 2004 when the Safe Port Act happened and we had to shut down.
Yeah.
And when regulations were coming in, and when we were talking about the New York, especially, I know my counterparts had represented, and we're trying to go back to the government to explain why is this a game of skill. I mean, the only thing ultimately we said that if it is not a game of skill, a person cannot win WSOP championship 3 or 4 times. Come on, he can't be so lucky.
Okay, I'm Katerina. Do you want to jump in on this? And partly I want to see kind of let's sort to get back to topic.
Yeah, sorry for that.
Let's try to get back to topic. Is there a difference when it comes to AML when it is a game of skill like poker versus, let's just say, the kind of the crash games, which are all the rage now, and they're way faster, and there's way faster, whereas poker is much more easy, and you have maybe not AML issues per se, but KYC. You know, because people maybe spend less in poker because it's a slower game, whereas, you know, with casinos and especially crash games, it's just so fast-paced. Do you see a difference there?
Oh, I think so. I mean, that there is difference like for 100%. And actually, we should understand that like operators, they divide, those operations into a few types. And for sure, there is like some distinct characteristics between them, especially in the character of the user as well. So we should understand there is like some 𝐂𝐭𝐡 type of the user. So if you are talking about the crash games that really like very, I think the top one among all the content of the operators on the website, I think it's, they just request and the documents and actually it's more complicated to get the full list from the users from the poker side, let's say, comparing to the one from the crash games, if compare this two types specifically. But what should I add to this topic, that we have a lot of operators like the clients of us, and unfortunately they are very scared of all the procedures, and they do not understand the differences between them. So what Aideen has mentioned, and I would like to emphasize on that, especially for all that people, I think there are a lot of operators or platforms here that we speak about some complicated things, let's say, but actually it's not so strict. So for Curaçao, is, I think that's one of the most popular jurisdictions right now. I mean, it's really very easy. If you check the AML legislation here, it's not some. It's some minimal requirements here. It's it does not take a lot of efforts from the operator, just to take care about them, especially with the service providers like Sumsub and so on. So if you are a operator, and do not be scared about that, because I know that Asian operators here, they do not pay a lot of attention to that. So I would like to call everybody to do that, because you can see, and we already spoke about all these types of fraud here, especially the account takeover, card frauds, AML fraud, and so on. Because very important for your business to have the stable operations here, because you have a huge financial loss. So this is not something, let's say dull topic that we are talking about, lots of people think. So actually, a good approach for your KYC and AML, for all the types of operation, has direct consequences on the financial success of your business. So if you do not want to get into trouble, to have some inconsistency on the financial side, please pay attention to that, because especially there are a lot of a big number of the experts and the regulators in Philippines here, in India, in Curaçao, and all other offshore licenses, let's say, they not put a lot of requirements here. So just take care about at the minimum, and it's done to protect the customers as well. But the main point is to protect your business. So
yeah, exactly. It's it's when it comes to even responsible gaming, it costs more to deal with deal with this, and than it does to think. You want to talk?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think specifically in regard to poker opens a can of worms, because it opens in terms of AML because it opens up the floor to chip dumping and to collusion in the sense of AML. And I think we're seeing this with a lot of games as well, where they're still in their infancy. A lot of them are the next-gen casinos that we talked about, are the skin betting casinos as well, where they're implementing player versus player games, such as coin flips, such as rock, paper, scissors, for example, which are very, very different in their nature to crash. So I think that, and you said poker is much slower as well. If you're playing 18 tables of 6 max at the same time, or you're playing fast fold poker, it can become much, much quicker. But I know what you mean, because in terms of transactions, if you're playing dice, you can make 30 transactions in the space of 10 seconds.
The very fact that some regulators have had to put limits on things like slots, on autoplay, that's where I'm coming from.
Like the 5 seconds in Germany, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I'll let you add to this as well with your poker background. But I think, also, if we look at the Asian market at the moment and the fact that within fraud in general, not just within iGaming, banking has become so much more expensive. About 5 years ago, a criminal group would pay about 20% to launder money through a bank with inside contacts. That's now risen to about 40%. And farming bank accounts has become so much harder than it ever was before. So I'm a little bit worried that, in particular in Asian markets, that fraud is going to start to cascade into gambling and into iGaming. And I think that we need to be in a position to be prepared to combat that before it gets out of hand.
Yeah, like you said, we're talking about new age, and we're talking about rediscovering how to fight the battle of AML or KYC or data protection. And so did the criminals become so smarter. Right? Now they have layering, right? They have structuring. It's so much more complex to identify the owner of a particular brand. When they're operating in grey market, it's that much more difficult to identify who the owner is, because there's so much structuring. They cut across so many geolocation. It cuts across so many jurisdictions. So it's that much more difficult, and they found easy way outs than earlier. They used to pull out large sums from a country or whatever. Now it's a smaller amounts which goes unnoticed, right? So this also means that it becomes that much more difficult for a compliance officer to keep a track on these transactions, and this is where the technology comes in handy. Right?
Okay, Katerina, I see you vehemently nodding in agreement here.
Because I would like to emphasize the main feature, and this seems that differs actually Asian region from Europe, let's say, where all the regulation is harmonized between all the countries. So we have the single legislation, let's say, in regards for the AML and KYC documents, like data protection and so on. So here in Asia, you have each country has its own regulation. So as it was mentioned before, it's quite complicated to get everything in full compliance with the regulation of each specific country here. So that is why for the in-house teams of the company, like the AML officers and compliance officers, you should track all these changes constantly. So as for AI and for the machine learning and the KYC and in AML, it's very good instrument here, because actually you can just use the databases here, especially from the regulatory point of view, and that is why it helps a lot to monitor and to assist with the compliance status of your operations, of your checks of the users and so on. So it's I think that is a question both of the effectiveness and of the efficiency of using AI and machine learning into that. Because as for Asia, with a number of the regulation, with a number of changes for each specific markets. Because as we see in Asia, all the operators are trying to expand their operations for all the markets. So it's not only a question to operate only exclusively in India. So they're getting their idea to expand for all for full region. So that is why you should pay attention for the specific points here. And so AI and machine learning is a good instrument. I think that you have a huge number of details
we
to
have
speak about that.
The clock here is yelling at us, and I can see Mark over there nodding his head. But I want to ask one more question. Sorry, Mark. So I want to just follow up on the AI stuff to know what Sumsub and what MetaGames does in this.
Sorry.
Both of you. It's both of you. Because, Katerina raised a very good point about AI, using AI for, to add on. And, and I think, I think we have a situation certainly now where AI, machine learning, it's complementary. You still can't get rid of the traditional tools, but we would be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit more about that, because she's raised a brilliant point. So I'd ask both of you on this, and then, look, he's standing over there staring at me. We're sorry.
I just love you, that's why. I like to look at you.
Okay, so guys, if you can just talk about that for a second.
So when I'm talking about AI, ML, and we are talking about products and all, we are not, I'm not saying that humans or the compliance officers will be eliminated in the process. No, we are only complementing to that. So what we are saying is, rather than him running through millions of transactions, let them be a system to identify the fraudulent transactions. I mean, suspicious transactions. Let me call it suspicious and fraudulent. And then voice out these suspicious transactions to the compliance officer for them to then do an investigation, right? AI/ML is always complementing and cannot compete with it, right? So when we are talking about ML also, right? The basic concept of ML is you can have a data model run on a particular, like let me take AML as an example, right? You can, you are keeping on identify the transactions and all. If you run the ML model, the larger set of data you run on, the more accurate the results are, right? So that's the whole concept. The stack that we are also making is we try to minimize the data assimilation from the players, take as much as minimum data as possible, run the models on the device, and only the results are pushed to the cloud, thereby not moving the complete bioinformation or the customer information, the KYC and all. So if you actually look at GDPR also, we are not sharing personal information, but we are sharing the insights. We are sharing the data models, which means that the data models are termed as business intelligence and not KYC or not AML as such. So we are only moving the results to the cloud. So at the cohort level, you'll be able to do take collective action or make decisions, and not at a player individual point of view, right? So that's where we are, what we are talking about. That's what we are talking about, and AL and ML in.
Guys, we've gone way over time. I wish we had another 2 hours so we could just sit and chat. This has been absolutely fantastic. So you've been brilliant. So Katerina, Navneeth, Kris, thank you very much for a great session.
Thank you for being an amazing moderator. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very, very much.